Hare Krishna. You cannot reason a man out of a position he was not reasoned into in the first place. So that many times when we have discussions, debates with others, we may try to present a point very reasonably, but the other person just doesn't get it. And we make him exasperated, frustrated, angered, and then the discussion may degenerate into a shouting match. To prevent such a thing from happening, we need to, while discussing, understand what is the basis for a particular person's position. Now, if we are discussing based on reason and logic, but the other person has got that conception, has acquired that opinion, not based on reason and logic, but by any other reason. It may be by sentiment, it may be by culture, it may be by tradition, for whatever reason, then it was not always possible for that person to change their position just based on reason. Now, sometimes this idea is there that that it is in atheism, in skepticism, that reason is very important, and religious people are just sentimental, they just believe. However, in the Bhagavad Gita, we see a strong emphasis on reason. Arjuna asks rational questions about what is it that I am meant to do, what is my dharma, what is the course of action that will harmonize me with the rest of reality. And in responding, Krishna does not just reel off a set of dogmas. Krishna gives reasoned arguments which are at multiple levels, which all serve the purpose of helping Arjuna to understand. And this underlying thread of reasoned discussion, wherein throughout Arjuna keeps asking questions, sometimes even skeptical questions, as he asked in the 4th chapter, when Krishna says that I spoke this sun knowledge long ago to the sun god. Then Arjuna immediately asks, how could you have spoken this? So there is a reason throughout the Bhagavad Gita. And then at the end, Krishna, when he speaks to Arjuna, twice again we see, in 18.63, he tells Arjuna now that you deliberate deeply and then decide what you want to do. This means that he is actually not just imposing his authority. Even though Krishna is God, Bhagavad Gita reveals that he is God, but Krishna does not use his godhood to impose any fiat, any commandment on Arjuna. He gives Arjuna choices and consequences, and then calls upon Arjuna, deliberate and choose. So, Krishna invites Arjuna to arrive at a reasoned position. And again, 9 verses later, he also asks in 18.72, what happened? Now, have you understood? Have you heard attentively? Have your doubts been removed? Is your illusion dispelled? The implication there is Krishna is ready to have the discussion once again, to repeat, to explain in a different way any points that have not been clarified. All this because he wants to lead Arjuna by reason to a sound conclusion. So here, although the Bhagavad Gita is considered a revelation of God, we see a thread of reason even within that revelation. And when we are discussing with people, if some people are just not ready to listen to reason, then we needn't keep arguing with them based on reason, because reason is not the basis for their position. In today's world, the default worldview is materialism. And many people within this materialistic worldview get hooked, get attached, get addicted to worldly pleasures. And when they thus get addicted to worldly pleasures, then they end up unable to resist the lures. They end up unable to combat, to give up those pleasures. And when any worldview, when a spiritual worldview is presented, which implies that they are to give up the worldly pleasures, although it is not that spiritual worldview requires them to give up all worldly pleasures, it's just the worldly pleasures that are anti-spiritual need to be given up. But there is a visceral response. There is a visceral antipathy to the idea that we have to give up worldly pleasures. And that is why people no longer stay reasonable. They irrationally just reject those positions. When somebody is attached, attachment binds and attachment blinds. Now, when attachment binds people to particular ways of living, particular forms of enjoyment, then it also blinds them to anything which will act as a deterrent to that enjoyment. And so when it is their emotional drive that is the basis, the fuel of their conviction, of their position, then reason may not help at that time. The Bhagavad Gita in the 3rd chapter 26th verse says that don't disturb the minds of people who are thus attached. Just encourage them in whatever way is possible. We need to use the right tools for the right job. We need to use the right devices for the right purposes. So reason is a very valuable purpose, very valuable tool for explaining spiritual concepts. But when in a particular interaction reason doesn't work. So some people, now the word fanatical is often used with religionists. Yes, some religionists are fanatical. But there are some non-religionists, there are some materialistic people who are also fanatical. That no, fanatical materialists means they believe that matter is all that exists. Material pleasure is all that is the goal of life. There is no spiritual thing at all. Now, even if there is logic, reasoning, evidence provided, but still they don't accept. So at such times, rather than spending time in an endless argument, we could just end the discussion on a favorable note, on a cordial note, and move on in our life. So instead of hitting our head against a wall, trying to reason with a person who's not reasonable, we can move towards other people who are reasonable and thus recognize that we need to adopt appropriate approaches for dealing with different people. So rather than trying to waste our time in people who are not having reason as their conviction, we can provide other reasonable people the reason for choosing a spiritual orientation for their life. Thank you. Hare Krishna.